In the quiet town of Athens, Georgia, the life of Evelyn Carter, 65, seemed like a carefully composed painting, each brushstroke reflecting decades of methodical choices and hard-earned serenity. Her two-story home on Millage Street, a red brick structure with a porch adorned with hanging ferns and white rocking chairs, was a landmark in the predominantly black middle-class neighborhood. The wide sash windows, always spotless, reflected the morning sun, and the immaculate lawn, mowed weekly, showcased Evelyn's discipline. Neighbors often stopped to admire the yard, where a century-old oak cast soft shadows over the entrance. Evelyn, a retired librarian from the University of Georgia, was known for her understated elegance. She wore pastel linen dresses, gold-rimmed glasses that rested delicately on her nose, and a warm smile that diffused any tension. Her presence was like a gentle breeze, comforting and familiar. On Sundays, Evelyn passed through the polished wooden doors of Ebenezer Baptist Church, where she occupied the same pew in the third row, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that matched her outfit. She sang hymns with a steady yet soft voice and greeted parishioners with gentle handshakes. During the week, she organized book clubs at the community center, discussing Toni Morrison novels or biographies of historical figures with a group of friends her age. Her rose garden, cultivated with patience over years, was a standout attraction. The flowers, in shades of red, white, and yellow, grew in symmetrical beds, and Evelyn spent hours pruning, watering, and talking to the plants as if they were old friends. "It's therapeutic," she'd say, with a slight southern drawl, when asked about her meticulous care for the garden. Evelyn had lived alone since her husband, James, died of cancer 10 years earlier. His absence still echoed through the house's hallways, especially in the master bedroom, where Evelyn kept a framed photo of their wedding day, him in a gray suit, her in a lace dress. Her two children, Maya, a 38-year-old lawyer, and Daniel, a 35-year-old engineer, lived in Atlanta, 2 hours away by car. Their visits were sporadic, usually reserved for holidays like Thanksgiving or Christmas. Maya called weekly, but the conversations were brief, centered on updates about work or the grandchildren Evelyn rarely saw. Daniel, more reserved, sent occasional texts, promising visits that often fell through. Despite the loneliness that sometimes settled in, Evelyn filled her days with methodical routines that gave structure to her life. She woke at 7 sharp, prepared a simple breakfast of toast, homemade peach jam, and a cup of Earl Grey tea. Sitting at the kitchen table with a view of the garden, she read the Athens Banner Herald, turning the pages with careful fingers. In the afternoons, she drove her silver Buick to the community library, where she volunteered, organizing shelves or helping children with homework. Friends described her as resilient but reserved, someone who guarded her pain with the same precision she once used to catalog books. In 2024, a new element entered her routine, bringing a subtle but noticeable shift. Marcus Turner, 32, a charismatic personal trainer at FitLife Gym, a few blocks from downtown Athens. Marcus was striking, with dark skin gleaming under Georgia's scorching sun, defined muscles under tight t-shirts, and a smile that seemed to promise the world. He had a magnetic energy, the kind that made strangers feel at ease with a single sentence. Evelyn met him when, encouraged by her doctor to improve her cardiovascular health, she signed up for functional fitness classes. The sessions began professionally, light dumbbell exercises, supervised stretches, and talks about balanced diets. Marcus was patient, adjusting workouts to respect Evelyn's limitations while challenging her to push past small hurdles, like increasing her treadmill time or adding an extra set of squats. "You're stronger than you think, Miss Evelyn," he'd say playfully, making her laugh. Over time, their relationship transcended the gym. After sessions, Marcus suggested coffee at Jittery Joe's, a charming cafe with exposed brick walls and the constant aroma of roasted beans. Evelyn, initially hesitant, agreed, intrigued by the attention of such a young, vibrant man. Their conversations flowed easily. Marcus shared stories about his clients, intense workouts, and his passion for soul music, while Evelyn recounted memories from her library career and amusing anecdotes about her students. Coffee dates evolved into dinners at the National, an upscale restaurant in downtown Athens known for its modern southern cuisine and a wine list Evelyn appreciated. She found herself choosing more elegant dresses for these occasions, swapping pastels for deep reds and blues, even experimenting with bolder lipstick. To neighbors, the relationship seemed unusual, given the age gap and their different worlds, but it wasn't scandalous. She seemed more alive with him around, Janice, a book club friend, later said in an interview. Like she'd found a second youth. Her eyes sparkled again. Marcus, meanwhile, was a man of clear ambitions. Raised in a poor neighborhood on Athens' outskirts, he'd overcome a tough past with a single mother who worked as a cleaner and an absent father. As a teenager, he found refuge in sports, first basketball, then weightlifting, which became his career. At Fit Life, he built a loyal clientele of middle-aged residents and young athletes. But Marcus dreamed bigger, opening his own fitness studio, a modern space with top-tier equipment and personalized classes. He spoke passionately about his plans, describing the studio as a place that would change lives. Evelyn, with her calm, maternal demeanor, listened attentively, asking practical questions about location, costs, and permits. Small details, however, slipped past her, or perhaps she chose to ignore them. Marcus never paid for dinners, offering a smile and excuses like, "Forgot my wallet," or "Next one's on me." Evelyn, with her robust university pension and decades of savings, didn't seem to mind. He casually mentioned needing a little financial push for his projects, like an expensive piece of equipment to boost his business. Enchanted by his energy and perhaps a need to feel useful, Evelyn offered help without hesitation, writing checks or transferring modest sums that, to her, were insignificant. In retrospect, there were subtle clues few noticed. Marcus rarely spoke about his personal life, deflecting questions about his family with vague comments like, "My mom's doing fine, over and make it," or changing the subject with a joke. He avoided details about his past, like the years after high school when, according to rumors, he'd had minor run-ins with the law, never confirmed. Evelyn, meanwhile, began showing subtle but noticeable changes. She started wearing flashier jewelry, like a pearl necklace with a gold pendant and diamond earrings, which she said were gifts from Marcus. "He has good taste," she'd comment with a shy smile when Janice complimented the pieces. A neighbor, Mr. Thompson, a retiree who spent mornings watering his garden, noticed Marcus parking his red Mustang in Evelyn's driveway late at night, unusual for a friendship. Once, he saw Marcus leaving the house at 2 a.m., adjusting his cap and glancing around before driving off. Still, to outsiders, Evelyn's life seemed normal, a delicate balance of established routines and new affections that colored her days. She continued attending church, tending her roses, and running the book club, while Marcus brought a fresh energy, like a breeze stirring the curtains of a long-closed house. In the fall of 2024, something shifted in the air of Athens, Georgia, as if the stifling summer heat had given way to a restless breeze. The oak leaves on Milledge Street fell in swirls, blanketing sidewalks in shades of orange and red, and the town seemed to brace for a winter yet to arrive. Evelyn Carter, always a figure of punctuality and consistency, began showing subtle cracks in her carefully built routine. The book club meetings she organized with devotion at the community center started missing her presence. Janice, her closest friend in the group, noticed Evelyn skip 2 sessions in a row, unprecedented in years. When asked, Evelyn sent brief texts citing last-minute commitments or a slight cold. But her voice on the phone sounded distant, as if speaking from a place Janice couldn't reach. Evelyn's rose garden, once a neighborhood postcard, also reflected the change. The flowers, previously vibrant in symmetrical beds, began to wilt, with dried petals piling up on the soil. Mr. Thompson, the neighbor who watered his yard each morning, watched with concern as the neglected rose bushes lost their vigor. "She was always so careful with those roses," he remarked to his wife, pointing at Evelyn's yard. "It's like she forgot they exist." At Ebenezer Baptist Church, where Evelyn sat in her third-row pew with a wide-brimmed hat, her presence felt less solid. During Pastor Williams' sermons on faith and redemption, Her eyes wandered to the stained glass window above the altar, fixed on an undefined point. She still sang hymns, but her once steady voice came out hesitant, almost mechanical. At the post-service coffee hour, she exchanged fewer words, her smiles shorter, her handshakes less warm. Janice, with her sharp intuition, was the first to sense something was amiss. During a chance encounter at the grocery store, where Evelyn pushed a cart with few items, Janice tried to broach the subject. "You okay, Evie? Haven't seen you at book club, and your roses, well, they need you." Evelyn adjusted her gold-rimmed glasses and offered a forced smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "Just tired, Janice. A lot on my mind," she replied, glancing at a shelf of canned goods. When Janice casually mentioned Marcus, asking about the gym workouts, Evelyn changed the subject with rehearsed swiftness. "Did you hear they're renovating the community library? It's going to look lovely," she said, rearranging items in her cart. Though worried, Janice didn't press, but she stored the interaction in her memory. There was something in her eyes, a shadow, she recalled months later to another friend. It wasn't just fatigue. It was like she was carrying a weight she wouldn't share. Meanwhile, Marcus Turner, the charismatic trainer who'd brought a spark to Evelyn's life, also showed signs of unease. At Fit Life, where he led workouts with magnetic energy, colleagues noticed a shift in his behavior. Marcus, who'd always maintained impeccable professionalism, began arguing loudly with other trainers, a rarity before. A client, a retired accountant who trained Tuesdays and Thursdays, overheard Marcus on the phone, speaking in a low, urgent tone about a plan that had to work. The conversation, caught by chance as the client adjusted weights, ended abruptly when Marcus realized he was being watched. He flashed his usual smile, but it felt forced, and he quickly moved to assist another client. Marcus also escalated his financial requests to Evelyn, moving beyond the casual, little pushes of before. In 1 week, he asked for $2,000, claiming he needed to fix the car, the red Mustang he displayed with pride. Soon after, his mentioned a advanced certification course, costing $5,000, calling it the final step to opening the studio. Evelyn, who'd initially helped generously, began to hesitate. Her pension and savings were comfortable, but the amounts were adding up. During a dinner at the National, with plates of lemon sauce shrimp and glasses of Chardonnay, Evelyn tried to address it lightly, masking tension with a playful tone. "Marcus, ever thought about saving a bit? All this spending must add up, no?" Marcus laughed, tilting his head back, but his eyes stayed cold, lacking their usual warmth. "Evie, relax. It's all investment. You'll see it'll pay off," he said, shifting to comment on the wine's flavor. Their once fluid conversations grew sharp edges. On a quiet evening on Evelyn's porch, as the sky darkened and crickets filled the air, they sipped iced tea from tall glasses, the ice clinking against the glass. Evelyn, holding her glass with both hands, looked at Marcus, who was scrolling on his phone. "Sometimes I feel like I don't really know you," she said softly, almost to herself. Marcus glanced up quickly, his face hardening for a moment before softening. "You know me better than anyone, Evie. Don't complicate things," he replied with a firmness that sounded more like a command than reassurance. The conversation died, and Marcus, citing an early commitment, left sooner than usual, the Mustang's roar echoing down the quiet street. Alone, Evelyn lingered on the porch, her tea untouched. Later, in the living room, she sat on the sofa and opened an old photo album, her hands trembling as she flipped through yellowed pages. Her fingers lingered on images of her late husband, James, captured laughing in the backyard or on trips to Georgia's coast. Something was wrong, an unease she couldn't name, like a dissonant note in a familiar melody. Neighbors, attuned to the neighborhood's rhythm, began noticing signs of their own. Robert, a 70-year-old widower who walked his Labrador nightly, saw Marcus leaving 5 and 10, a trendy downtown bar, with a younger woman, perhaps in her 20s. They laughed loudly, Marcus with an arm around her, a demeanor unlike the restraint he showed with Evelyn. The next day, Robert mentioned it casually while helping Evelyn gather fallen leaves in her yard. Saw Marcus last night at 5 and 10 with a young lady. They seem pretty lively, he said carefully. Evelyn, holding a garden trowel, brushed it off with a wave. He's young, likes to have fun, she replied, but her voice quavered, and she quickly shifted to point at a rosebush needing pruning. Internally, though, doubts grew like weeds in a neglected garden. Evelyn started noticing inconsistencies she'd previously ignored. Marcus's texts arriving late at night, often after 11 p.m., with short, generic messages like, "Thinking of you," or "Crazy day, talk tomorrow." He offered vague excuses about his whereabouts. "Meeting a supplier," or "helping a friend," but never elaborated. Once, when Evelyn playfully asked where he'd spent the afternoon, Marcus laughed it off. "Out and about, Evie, you know how it is." The seed of suspicion, once just a possibility, had taken root and begun to spread. Evelyn Carter was never one for direct confrontation. Her reserved nature and understated elegance always led her to resolve conflicts with diplomacy. But in November 2024, something shifted within her. Her analytical mind, honed by decades of organizing files and cataloging books at the University of Georgia Library, took charge. What began as vague suspicion turned into a methodical quest for truth. Evelyn started observing Marcus Turner with a detective's care, each of his actions logged in her memory like pieces of a puzzle she didn't yet fully understand. Sitting at the kitchen table under the soft glow of a brass lamp, she began noticing details she'd previously overlooked. A pivotal moment came when she spotted a new watch on his wrist, a sleek model with a silver face and leather strap, clearly expensive, far beyond what she imagined Marcus could afford. "Nice watch," she said casually while pouring coffee on a Saturday morning. Marcus, without missing a beat, replied, "Gift from a client, thanks for some extra sessions." The answer, though smooth, didn't convince her. Her eyes, hidden behind gold-rimmed glasses, narrowed briefly, and she nodded, filing the information away. Determined to clarify her doubts, Evelyn took discreet steps, driven by a mix of curiosity and self-preservation. She began reviewing her bank statements, something she rarely did closely, trusting the stability of her pension and savings. In her small office, a room lined with bookshelves and a solid oak desk, she examined the records with a pencil in hand, marking each suspicious transaction. What she found stunned her: frequent withdrawals, many aligning with the financial favors she'd done for Marcus. $2,000 here, $5,000 there, plus smaller transfers that seemed trivial at the time. In total, $15,000 had left her account over the past 6 months, a sum that represented years of careful saving. The discovery brought a tightness in her chest, not just for the financial loss but for the implied betrayal. To organize her suspicions, she started keeping a notebook, a black-covered pad stored in her desk drawer. In it, she logged Marcus's visits to her home, times he left abruptly, and the excuses he offered. November 14th, 9 p.m., said he had to handle something at the studio, returned at 2 a.m. She wrote on one page. It was like she was cataloging a crime. Her daughter, Maya, later said in an interview, describing the notebook found months later. A secondary character entered the scene, offering a new perspective on Evelyn's investigation. Carla, a 28-year-old former colleague of Marcus at FitLife, had curly hair and a bluntness that contrasted with Evelyn's gentleness. Carla had quit after clashing with Marcus, who, she claimed, prioritized high-potential clients over fair shift distribution. Their encounter happened by chance at the community library, where Evelyn volunteered. While shelving romances, Evelyn saw Carla return a book and struck up a conversation, mentioning she knew Marcus. Carla, without mincing words, let slip a warning. "Watch out for Marcus. He's got a way of making people feel special, but it's all a game." The words hit Evelyn like an electric shock. Feeling the weight of the revelation, she invited Carla for coffee at Jittery Joe's, where, at a secluded table, she pressed for details. Carla, initially hesitant, opened up. "He has a history of cozying up to older clients, always with promises of affection for help. Once, he asked me to introduce him to a wealthy friend. Called it an investment. she said, stirring her coffee. Evelyn listened in silence, her face impassive, but her hands gripped the mug tightly. Each word confirmed the doubts she tried to suppress. The investigation wasn't without obstacles. Marcus, as if sensing Evelyn's growing coldness, doubled down on his charm, a skill that had always extricated him from trouble. He showed up at her house with bouquets of white daisies, her favorite, and left affectionate notes on the fridge, written in his confident cursive. "You're my rock, Evie. Don't know what I'd do without you." Red one, held by a heart-shaped magnet. These familiar gestures made Evelyn question her suspicions, as if she were betraying the trust of someone who seemed genuinely devoted. On quieter nights, sipping tea on the porch, she reread the notes, trying to reconcile the Marcus who wrote them with the man who dodged her questions. But the notebook, with its precise entries, kept her grounded. Each record, a late-night call, a vague excuse, an evasive comment, was a reminder something was wrong. A bold attempt at answers came on a chilly November night when Marcus slept over after a home-cooked dinner. As he slept in the guest room, his face relaxed under the dim lamp, Evelyn spotted his phone on the dresser, its screen dark. Driven by an impulse she didn't fully understand, she picked it up, her heart racing. The phone was locked, but a partial notification appeared when she touched the screen. "You won't believe how much she gave me." The message, cut off by the lock, was enough to spike her pulse, a rush of adrenaline mixed with nausea. She returned the phone, trembling, and spent the night awake, staring at the ceiling, the words echoing in her mind. The near proof, though incomplete, strengthened her resolve. Seeking support, Evelyn contacted Thomas, an old university friend and retired accountant known for his attention to detail. They met at her home, in the living room where the scent of fresh coffee filled the air. With the notebook and bank statements on the table, Evelyn explained the situation in a hushed voice, as if afraid of being overheard. Thomas, with bifocals and a serious expression, reviewed the documents carefully, frowning at each page. "These withdrawals are troubling, Evie. It's not just the amount, but the frequency. You need to talk to him," he said, adjusting his glasses. Evelyn shook her head, lips tight. "I need proof, Thomas. I can't accuse him without something solid." Her voice carried a determination Thomas had never seen in their years of friendship. He suggested limiting withdrawals and monitoring finances closely, but Evelyn was beyond that. The search for truth had become an obsession, each discovery fueling a mix of anger, hurt, and an urgent need to reclaim control of her life. She spent sleepless nights reviewing the notebook, drawing lines between entries, as if she could decipher Marcus the way she once decoded library cataloging systems. With each step, however, the shadow of betrayal grew, a weight she carried in silence as fall turned to winter. In December 2024, the truth unraveled, tearing through the veil of illusion Evelyn Carter had clung to for months. The discovery came on a cold morning, with Athens' sky blanketed in gray clouds that mirrored the heaviness in her heart. Driven by a resolve built over weeks of investigation, Evelyn seized a moment of Marcus's carelessness. He'd left a scrap of paper on the guest room dresser, a password scrawled in hasty letters, likely for his email or another account. Evelyn, who never imagined invading someone's privacy, felt an irresistible urge. In her office, with curtains parted to let in pale light, she accessed Marcus's email on her laptop, the cursor blinking like a dangerous invitation. What she found devastated her, each word a blow to her soul. There were exchanges with a woman named Latoya, someone Evelyn had never heard of. In them, Marcus mocked Evelyn with a cruelty she couldn't have imagined. He called her a naive old lady, laughed at her trust, and detailed, with calculated coldness, how he used her money to fund dates with Latoya, expensive dinners, and even weekend trips. One message, dated days earlier, was particularly crushing. "A few more months, and I'll have enough to open the studio. She doesn't suspect a thing." Evelyn read and reread the words, her stomach churning, hands shaking as she gripped the mouse. She was in the living room when she finished, the house's silence amplifying her uneven, sob-stifled breaths. The room, with its blue velvet sofa, framed family photos, and the Persian rug James had chosen years ago felt strangely distant, as if it belonged to another life. Evelyn clutched the printed emails, pages marked with red pen underlines of the phrases that hurt most. The wall clock, a wedding gift still ticking, marked the seconds with a steady tick-tock, as if time mocked her pain. She spent hours there, cycling through shock, anger, and a deep sadness words couldn't capture. The woman who organized book clubs with patience, who tended roses with devotion, now faced the betrayal of someone she'd let into her home, her life. The confrontation came that evening, when Marcus arrived for a dinner Evelyn had planned with clear intent. She'd set the table with care, as she did for special occasions, with a white linen cloth and rarely used porcelain plates. The aroma of herb-roasted chicken lingered in the kitchen, but the air was thick with tension. Marcus entered through the front door, his usual confident smile, carrying a bottle of red wine as a gesture. Evelyn, in a navy dress and gold-rimmed glasses, waited in the dining room, the printed emails folded beside her plate. After minimal small talk, she cut to the chase, her voice steady but laced with pain she couldn't hide. "Who's Latoya?" she asked, eyes locked on his, searching for any hint of remorse. Marcus faltered, his smile flickering, before trying to deflect. "Latoya? Just a friend, Evie, no big deal," he said with a forced laugh. But Evelyn didn't relent. She slid the printed emails across the table, the open pages revealing his cruel words. "Did you think I was stupid?" she asked, her voice rising, tears streaming down her cheeks, unheeded. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Cornered, Marcus switched tactics. The charm that always saved him gave way to arrogant defense. He laughed nervously, leaning back in his chair, as if he could downplay the damage. "You wanted company, Evie. I gave you that. What's the problem? It was good for both of us, wasn't it?" The words, delivered with a near-defiant tone, hit like a punch. Evelyn, who'd built a life of control, dignity, and care for others, felt something break inside. It was more than anger. It was the shattering of trust she'd taken months to build with him. Marcus's response was the spark, the moment the illusion of affection dissolved completely. There was no going back. The woman who spent hours pruning roses with precision, who organized bookshelves with impeccable order, now saw only betrayal, a void where hope had been. Evelyn stood, fist clenched, and pointed to the door. "Get out of my house!" "No," she said, each word carrying an authority Marcus didn't dare challenge. He grabbed his jacket, his face a mix of surprise and irritation, and left without another word, the door's slam echoing through the silent house. Evelyn stood trembling, tears still falling. She walked to the living room, where the photo album of her late husband rested on the coffee table. She sat on the sofa but didn't open it. Instead, she stared into space, her mind swirling with Marcus's words and Latoya's messages. The seed of an irreversible decision had been planted, a resolve growing quietly, fueled by pain and the need to reclaim her dignity. On the night of December 15th, Marcus returned to Evelyn's house, claiming he wanted to explain everything. The atmosphere was charged. The living room, with its lace curtains and family photos, felt like a stage for tragedy. Evelyn, in a blue sweater Marcus had once complimented, held a cooling cup of tea in her hands. Marcus, in a leather jacket and a forced smile, tried to salvage the situation. "You're overreacting, Evie. I love you, you know that." The dialogue was sharp. "Love?" Evelyn shot back. "You used me, Marcus. Every cent, every word. It was all a lie." He tried to approach, but she stepped back. "You'll pay back every dollar you took," she said, pointing to a stack of bank statements on the table. Marcus, seeing his charm fail, turned cold. "If you go to the police, I'll tell everyone how you begged for my attention. Who'll believe a lonely old lady?" The confrontation escalated. Evelyn, driven by a rage she didn't know she possessed, grabbed a silver letter opener from the table, a gift from her late husband. Marcus laughed, underestimating her. "What are you gonna do with that, Evie?" In the next moment, in an impulse she didn't comprehend, Evelyn struck him in the neck. Marcus staggered, shocked, and fell, blood staining the beige carpet. The sound of the letter opener hitting the floor echoed in the silent house. The twist came when Evelyn, in panic, realized Marcus was still breathing. Instead of calling for help, she watched, paralyzed, as he lost consciousness. The methodical librarian had crossed a line from which there was no return. Chaos ensued. Evelyn, trembling, cleaned the letter opener and stowed it in a drawer. She dragged Marcus's body to the basement, a space she rarely used, and covered it with a tarp. For 2 days, she maintained a facade, attended church, smiled at neighbors. But the secret's weight consumed her. Her once kind eyes now seemed hollow. The police were alerted when Latoya, worried about Marcus's disappearance, reported him missing. Investigators arrived at Evelyn's house after tracing Marcus's phone, still emitting a signal from the basement. Confronted, Evelyn collapsed. "I didn't mean to kill him," she sobbed as she was handcuffed. "But he took everything from me." Reactions were swift. Maya and Daniel, stunned, struggled to grasp how their composed mother reached this point. Athens' community was divided. Some saw Evelyn as a manipulated victim, others as a cold-blooded killer. Local media, like the Athens Banner Herald, ran sensational headlines, but the case's details revealed a more complex story. Evelyn was tried in 2025 and sentenced to 20 years for manslaughter, with parole eligibility. In prison, she began writing letters to her children, expressing regret but also a tortured justification. "I wanted to take back what he stole from me, not just the money, but who I was." Marcus became a polarizing figure, with friends defending his charisma and others highlighting his opportunism. Evelyn's house was sold, the roses died, and the porch sat empty. Athens moved on, but the case lingered as a reminder of the fragile lines between love, betrayal, and despair. What drove a woman like Evelyn to such an extreme act? Loneliness, manipulation, or something deeper, rooted in the complexities of the human soul? In her final letter, Evelyn reflected, "I didn't kill Marcus out of hate. I killed him because, for a moment, I believed it was the only way to feel whole again." The words linger like an epitaph, a reminder that in Athens, as anywhere, normalcy can hide abysses.